Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be looking at one of the national strategies that the government is planning to implement, part of Egypt's strategy 2030 for sustainable development. Now, this will be the national strategy for intellectual property. This deals with all the knowledge, innovation, the scientific copyrights and intellectual property rights for the national strategy for Egypt. We're going to be focusing and looking at that, looking at what does it really mean, what does it really protect, what does it really guarantee for the scientists, the innovators, the artists for Egypt. Now, before we start talking about that, let's check out some of the main stories making the news today. And we'll start off with President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who received the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom, on Tuesday, in the attendance of Minister of Health and Population Khaled Abdel-Ghaffar. Presidential spokesman Bassam Radi said that the President expressed Egypt's keenness on promoting cooperation with the WHO with the aim of enhancing the healthcare system and medical services in the country in light of various health initiatives at the state's level. This comes within the framework of the 100 Million Healthy Lives initiative, which aims to preserve health and safety of the Egyptian citizens according to international criteria, especially ending waiting lists for critical surgeries initiative, as well as applying for the comprehensive health insurance at the level of all governorates. The head of state further hailed the role played by the World Health Body during the coronavirus pandemic through providing sufficient vaccines. President el-Sisi asserted that Egypt would continue its efforts to expand the comprehensive health insurance system to cover all the state as one of the national priorities that contribute in achieving principles and health targets to realize Egypt's Vision 2030 for sustainable development. For his part, Adhanom praised Egypt's national efforts in healthcare field, notably different presidential initiatives under the umbrella of 100 Million Healthy Lives initiative, which has contributed in promoting health services nationwide. He expressed the WHO's keenness to enhance the health ties with Egypt in order to benefit from Egypt's experience as a pioneering and role model at the international level. The meeting tackled horizons of cooperation between the two sides in order to consolidate various efforts by the state to boost the general health in Egypt, as well as the comprehensive health insurance system. Also today, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi reviewed the future strategy for the civil aviation sector during his meeting with Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli, Lieutenant General Abbas Helmi, Minister of Civil Aviation Mohammed Abbas Helmi, and Head of the Maintenance Company of Egypt Air, Major General Zakaria Ismail. Presidential spokesperson Ambassador Bassam Radi said President el-Sisi gave his directives to broaden efforts aimed at advancing resources of this vital sector and revamp its affiliate companies so as to cope with the state-led comprehensive development process witnessed in different fields and make the best use of the country's strategic site. The head of state instructed to adopt a development and modernization approach based on maximizing the available capabilities, including Egypt as a unique destination. During the meeting, President el-Sisi was briefed on ongoing efforts to develop Sharm el-Sheikh and St. Catherine's airports in preparation for hosting the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP27, in Sharm el-Sheikh next month. The meeting also tackled strategic goals of the civil aviation sector and progress made in several under-implementation projects, notably those related to developing airports, increasing their capacities, modernizing Egypt's air's fleet of planes, upgrading aviation and air control systems, and other related facilities. And Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri and visiting Moldovan Foreign Minister Nicu Popescu held a press conference following their talks in Cairo today. Speaking at the press conference, Minister Shukri said their talks focused on means to boost bilateral economic and trade ties. The top diplomat noted that 3 memorandums of understanding were signed with Moldova. For his part, the Moldovan foreign minister said his country is looking forward to signing deals with Egypt in the field of energy, adding that both sides exchanged views on the repercussions of the Russia-Ukraine war. He said they had also reviewed activating trade exchange and facilitating the entrance of citizens between the two countries. And First Lady Mrs. Intisar Sisi said the role of girls is essential in the society. She made the statement to mark Girls' Day on Tuesday. She said the society should support the girls and enable them to become assets for the Egyptian nation. These were some of the main stories making the news today, but now turning our attention to tonight's topic now. Egypt is keen to integrate a national strategy for intellectual property into its agenda, part of the Sustainable Development Vision and Plan for 2030. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has affirmed Egypt's keenness to integrate intellectual property issues into its national policy, as knowledge, innovation and scientific research are a fundamental pillar of economic development and progress. During his talks with the Director General of the World Intellectual Property Organization, Darren Tang, who was visiting the country, the President emphasized Cairo's support for its cooperation with WIPO in its various fields of work, especially scientific research, science, technology and innovation. The head of state also pointed out to Egypt's enhancement for entrepreneurs and innovators, noting in this regard that the country has launched its national strategy for intellectual property. The meeting, which was attended by the Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli and Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research Mohammed Ayman Ashur, highlighted Egypt's support and cooperation with WIPO in various fields, specifically scientific research, science, technology and innovation. Accordingly, the National Strategy for Intellectual Property in Egypt has been launched. For his part, Tang expressed his honor to meet with President el-Sisi, praising Egypt's efforts in cooperation with WIPO to support intellectual property, capacity building and development efforts, and to provide job opportunities for young innovators. These efforts were embodied in the National Intellectual Property Strategy launched in Egypt under Egypt's Development Vision 2030. This, in turn, has made Egypt an inspiring model to be followed by the rest of the Middle East, given the leadership of its president towards unprecedented achievements in various fields. He also lauded Egypt's launch of the National Strategy for Intellectual Property within the framework of the Egypt Vision 2030. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Madbouli launched the country's national strategy for intellectual property during a ceremony held in the new administrative capital in the presence of a host of ministers and local and international officials. The ceremony, held under the patronage of President el-Sisi, came in line with the WIPO development agenda and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Addressing the ceremony, Madbouli voiced his deep appreciation to the President for giving due attention to this file and reiterated the move reflects the country's interest in this area, given the role that intellectual property system can play in advancing the Egyptian economy and achieving the sustainable goals of the country's Vision 2030.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and now we're joined over the phone to shed more light on tonight's topic by Dr. Hussein Khaled, the former Minister of Higher Education. Dr. Khaled, good evening, sir.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm very well, Dr. Khaled. Now, Egypt is working and planning on establishing and integrating a national strategy for intellectual property part of its national policy, part of a major sustainable development goal for 2030. Now, before we start talking about Egypt undertaking such a system and policy, how important is it to establish a national strategy for intellectual property in Egypt?
It is very important and it is an elemental part of any research or any innovations in any country. And, the World Intellectual Property Organization set the objectives of this organization by keeping the creations of the mind, such as inventions, literary, artistic work, designs, symbols, names, and images used in commerce. And this, of course, include also the copyright, the geographical indicators, the industrial designs, the trade secrets, and so on.
Well, Dr. Khaled, if we will establish a national strategy for intellectual property, does it protect the rights of scientists, artists, intellectuals, innovators in general in Egypt or internationally as well? So will it be copyrighted, these ideas and these artistic and industrial and scientific innovations, will they be protected in Egypt and protected worldwide as well?
Of course, yes, exactly. You will keep your rights locally and internationally. And this will lead Egypt being an element or a part or contained in the WIPO, which is the World Intellectual Property Organization, will facilitate these copyrights for any Egyptian that is working in either in locally or internationally. And of course, this will help also to face many problems we used to have in the past. So, and there were many examples even in the near past regarding the, of course, the graphical indicators and, some of the research publications and many aspects that will be that will help in solving this problem.
Well, President Sisi actually met with the Director General of the World Intellectual Property Organization, Darren Tang, and they spoke about cooperation between Egypt and the global intellectual property organization in general. What sort of cooperation would it be? Is it in terms of how to establish the national strategy? Are we going to work on meeting certain international standards so it will be, as you've mentioned, protected and copyrighted in Egypt and around the world as well? What is the nature of this cooperation?
Well, it's a kind of an MOU between Egypt and this organization. And of course, this WIPO have an academy and a magazine. And the academy will help in distance learning and awareness of the intellectual properties for everyone who are interested in this, who is interested in this. And also the magazine, which is the periodical kind of publication, will also help the Egyptians to be updated and know what is going on. Also, in addition to this, they will help in raising the infrastructure of the administration and the organizations in Egypt that will apply the policies and the objectives of the WIPO.
Well, maybe we understand what sort of benefits it would give the Egyptians and the Egyptian economy and society as a whole having an intellectual property authority and strategy in general. But what would be the main obstacles and challenges for Egypt by establishing such a policy?
Well, it is the general or the general culture of the population about this issue. I think we need to have an advocacy societies or groups that will publish or expand the knowledge of how to deal with this important issue. We don't have the experience in this area. So I think we may depend also on the propaganda and on the the media and the social media issues and organizations to help Egyptian people to get acquainted and know exactly the value and the benefit of applying this important issue.
Well, Egypt has been undertaking a lot of national mega projects, and it has also been undertaking a big wave of startups, entrepreneurship, small and medium enterprises. Do you think that by establishing a national strategy and a national system for intellectual property, do you think it will help these projects and these industries move forward, or could it even hold it back a little bit?
Of course, Egypt has a strategy for sustained development. According to the 2015 resolution of the General Assembly of the United Nations, that includes 17 objectives for sustained development. And of course, research, education, health, and economy are on the top of these objectives. And if you use all the weapons of the WIPO in trying to integrate this into the sustained development strategy plan that Egypt want to do till the year 2030, it will help much of achieving these objectives.
Well, I mean, if Egypt is undertaking such a strategy in a time when Egypt is going through its own digital transformation, will it make it a process, a fast process to implement, implement and really make use of an intellectual property system? Having the digitization and digitalization systems in Egypt, will it secure and maybe speed up the process of establishing such a strategy?
Of course, this is very important because now, especially after the pandemic of COVID-19, the digitalization of everything and the virtuality of many actions are now the standard of practice in different aspects of life. And if you combine this with the use of the objectives of the WIPO, being Egypt being part of it, will help in in promoting the goals of the sustainable development strategy, and the digitalization will be an integral part of doing this.
Well, what would it do now in terms of attracting foreign investors or having a local and national, international cooperation with different multinationals, with different countries, with different governments? Having a strategy, does it have or bear any sort of effect on cooperation, or at least attracting foreign investors and foreign corporations in Egypt?
Well, it will help let the investors in different aspects come and feel they are safe regarding their rights and their intellectual rights in anything they are doing inside Egypt. And this will promote also, in addition to the, of course, Egypt is a safe country from different aspects, and this will add more to the safety of anyone who comes to try to invest in Egypt, because he will be sure that anything he will do or she will do will be copyrighted to himself or herself.
Well, Dr. Khaled, now you're a former Minister of Higher Education, and you know how the educational system, especially in university levels, there is a big sort of direction in digital and technical and AI education here in Egypt. Now, what does a strategy like that, a national strategy and an authority that will be established in 2 years, how will it protect and encourage students, innovators and scientists and researchers to really come up and really create some sort of a creative environment for these innovators?
Well, Of course, the university job is to do three things: to do education for students, to do research, and to help in applying this to the society. And of course, if you have innovative ideas inside the university, and if you have a large number of applications, for example, last year we published, according to the Shimago website, more than 30,000 scientific publications worldwide. And this will, if you apply this and putting in mind that the copyrights of these publications or these inventions or these patents are going to be kept to the organization like the university and the person himself who is doing the job, he will be encouraged to have more and more work in the education and in applying the inventing the ideas to the society.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we establish such a system and such an authority here in Egypt, so anybody who comes up with a creative idea, artistic, be it or industrial or scientific or what have you, it will be protected in Egypt and internationally as well. But what about the people who already had ideas and maybe they already started their own projects, started their own startups and businesses on previous ideas? Would they still also get the same benefit by copywriting their own scientific or creative ideas, or is it mainly targeting the new ones?
Sure, it's a continuing process, and it will be applied to the past and the present and the future, for sure.
Well, Egypt, Dr. Khaled, is embarking on many national strategies recently. I mean, we're talking about the national strategy for combating climate change. We're talking about a national strategy for human rights in 2021, talking about a national strategy now for intellectual property. So all these national strategies that the government has been integrating within its policy, how do you see all these strategies pushing Egypt towards its goal for a sustainable development 2030?
Well, these are the basic elements of any country or any nation who wants to develop and to have a high ranking among the other nations. And all what you have said is important and elemental. And of course, one of the ideas that related to these strategies are the governance. And the governance are also important for the liberty of academic liberty, for the transparency, the integration, the collaborative work, the innovations, and lastly, the sustained development. And these are all objectives that any nation wants to develop must put in mind.
Well, we will be cooperating with the International Intellectual Property Organization headed by Darren Tang, but what other countries are well known or are pioneering in this field that we can actually make use of cooperating with them or getting to know the expertise, the know-how of establishing and protecting and sustaining an intellectual property system?
Well, most of the European countries and the North American countries are vastly developed in this area, and also many Asian nations. And, now, after in the last 8 years or so, Egypt now opened its relations and bolstering its relations with many countries. And it is a good chance now to put the intellectual property issues inside the collaborative collaboration that is going to be done between Egypt and other countries, but exactly most of the European countries. And I think that those who are in the Mediterranean basin are very near to Egypt, and we may collaborate with them more than any other country.
Well, by having an intellectual property system and authority here in Egypt, does it bear any sort of consequences or effects on international crises such as the coronavirus pandemic or a shortage in energy or food as a result of wars or international crises? Does it bear any sort of effect, or is it really just focusing on industries and certain sectors not having in mind or not really having an effect or a say in international crises?
No, on the reverse, the pandemic, COVID pandemic, even any health problem like this it needs inventions, needs new ideas, needs out-of-box ideas and applications. And if you feel safe that what you are going to invent is protected by this intellectual property law, will let you feel more encouraged. You develop your inventions. Of course, to fight COVID-19 in Egypt is different than fighting it in other countries. And so you have to develop your own applied ideas and scientific issues to fight any local problem, even if this problem is international.
Dr. Khaled, now a lot of governmental institutions or ministries are still trying to work on integrating digital transformation within their institutions and a lot of refurbishing and restructuring within the institutions. Now, having an intellectual property system also being integrated within these institutions, how difficult or easy could it prove to be?
Well, it needs more effort and more, organized activities. Also, we have the quality assurance organization in Egypt, and if we integrate this to other issues of follow-up any institution or any organization in Egypt, we will help in promoting them to achieve their goals. And I think that it's now the right time to push and try to apply this in every area in the country, and also try to publish and advocate the ideas to the public, to the population themselves. Because if you start from the top, you will not succeed. But if you start from the bottom, for sure you will achieve your objective.
Dr. Khaled, if Egypt is planning on establishing a national intellectual property authority within 2 years, now what sort of calibers or cadres will be responsible of having such an authority and running and supervising such an authority? What sort of backgrounds are needed to maintain and operate the National Intellectual Property Authority?
Well, the experience and education, and this is now missing. And I think one of the main objectives of collaboration with the OICO is to develop the human infrastructure in addition to the basic infrastructure that are needed to develop this. And within the coming 2 years, I think we will succeed in training more people, because the experienced personnel are lacking in this area, and it needs a lot of effort to train the people and the scientists and the different organizations, and to use the collaboration with the OICO to achieve this.
Dr. Hussein Khaled, the former Minister of Higher Education, thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, Egypt is embarking on a national strategy for intellectual property, and we are establishing an authority within 2 years. This is the result of President Sisi's meeting with Darren Tang, the Director General of the International Intellectual Property Organization, in line with the Sustainable Development Goal of 2030. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli said the National Strategy for Intellectual Property, which was launched in Egypt, is considered the first step of its kind in the country. During a ceremony marking the launch of the National Strategy for Intellectual Property, Madbouli reiterated the strategy reflects the state's belief in the importance of the intellectual property mechanism in pushing forward the wheel of economic development and achieving sustainable goals of the country's Vision 2030. The ceremony was attended by a host of ministers and local and international officials, including the World Intellectual Property Organization WIPO Director General Darren Tang. Minister of Higher Education Mohammed Ayman Ashour asserted the importance of intellectual property protection in creating an environment conducive to innovation, pointing to the 845 requests filed with the Egyptian Patent Office so far in 2022 compared to the 1,271 requests in 2021. He explained his ministry aims to spread awareness of intellectual property law at the universities and postgraduate levels to consolidate the foundations of intellectual property. On his side, Minister of Trade and Industry Ahmed Samir stated the intellectual property helps the economy grow, adding his ministry has set goals to help make patents available for effective use and contribute to sustainable development. He explained the ministry worked in coordination with the rest of the authorities to define intellectual property goals of the Trade Ministry and achieve integration between research and academic institutions and the industry sector. In this regard, Ministry of International Cooperation Iranian Mashad said there is a passion amongst investors for intellectual property because it paves the way for increasing investments in emerging companies. She added that the National Strategy for Intellectual Property helps the Egyptian economy open many areas and create additional job opportunities, as the global economy currently depends on the usage of technology and innovation. Minister of Supply and Internal Trade Alim Salhi said the strategy is also directed to establish the Egyptian Intellectual Property Authority because the president of one body supervising intellectual property will work to create a supportive environment, adding the most important point was to spread societal awareness.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Definitely the meeting between President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Darren Tang, the Director General of the World International Property Organization, has been quite a fruitful one that will result in establishing a national strategy for intellectual property here in Egypt, and in 2 years' time there will be an intellectual property authority that will be established in Egypt, something that will protect the ideas and innovations of Egyptian scientists, youth, artists, everything that will help push the Egyptian economy as a whole, because it is consistent with the UN Sustainable Development Strategy and Egypt's vision to achieve it by 2030. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate, but please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.